I'm Anthony Davis. It's New Year's Eve, and as 2023 becomes 2024, here on The Weekend Show, we look back at some of our favourite conversations where we dissect American politics, culture, and the unnecessary division that keeps America from progressing in line with the rest of the world. I thought I'd start with a conversation from a few months back with the former United States Federal Bureau of Investigation's agent, Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division, and a guy who led the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 United States elections, Peter Stzrok. I want to focus just initially on his talk about Vladimir Putin, because Russian media takes US media, far-right media, for example, Alex Jones stuff, which they rip off of, not YouTube because he's banned off YouTube, I think Rumble or wherever he posts his stuff. And they show Russian citizens to show that the US is now thinking the same as Putin is thinking with regard to the war in Ukraine and other things. But also Donald Trump actually highlighted something that Vladimir Putin had said to effectively try and give him a pass. He pointed to sympathetic comments from Putin to try and bolster his case that he's being treated unfairly by prosecutors in the US. So Putin asserted on Tuesday that the criminal cases against the former US president are political revenge that show the fundamental corruption of the United States. Peter, you were at the very center of the first Russia investigation. So you understand who the enemy is in this conversation. And yet we have a former president who is running again, who is referencing propaganda being said by an enemy of the state to try and support his cause. I mean, this is very dangerous and very serious. How does that make you feel?
Immensely uncomfortable. I mean, it goes to, what is Trump's conception of the role of the presidency? What is his conception of the civic duty of the presidency? If your job is, what is your job as the president? Provide for the national security and defense of the United States, sure. But at the end of the day, presumably you want to say what I can do to advance life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, democracy, democratic ideals. I mean, I would argue that most Americans, if you say, what do you want your president to do at the end of the day, he or she should do those things, right? Make sure we're safe. And then provide for the liberties and the bounty of democratic society and let that flourish as much as we can in the United States and everywhere else. But for Trump, it's not. He has this fascination with authoritarians and power. It is the strong man, whether that's Putin, whether it's Xi, and how, the magnificent parades that Xi has, and Duterte, the strong man in the Philippines, and, what he says goes, and Erdogan, and on and on, and all the Saudis, that now Jared is fleecing for live golf and everything else for all they can get. It isn't about, I am drawn to democratic ideals. It is, I am drawn not just to power, but to authoritarian power, to absolute power, to power that brooks no dissent, to power that snaps its fingers and has things done, to power that wields without any sort of bending the authority over the society. And so, to wheel out Putin as a character reference, a war criminal, somebody, who is not only, invaded Ukraine, but is engaging and has engaged in war crimes against civilians, who imprisons and kills dissidents, journalists, homosexuals, non-Christians, on and on and on, to hold that up as some exemplar of, here's the endorsement on the back of my book. It doesn't, he's not holding up Abraham Lincoln. He is not holding up Gandhi. He is not holding up anybody that you would think of as somebody that an American hero. Vladimir Putin is not an American hero. Xi Jinping is not an American hero. Duterte is not an American hero. Erdogan is not an American hero. MBS is not an American hero. But nevertheless, for Trump, look how strong these men are. No American should want a president. When you say, who do you admire? Whose endorsement do you want to tell us about? Picking from that basket of international authoritarians.
He relished it. When he said Putin's name, he kind of gave him a bit of a build-up. He was like the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, like he was expecting Megyn Kelly to go, "Ooh, really?" And this is what worries me the most, is that, again, for me, it goes back to his mental pathology, but to be so deranged as to think that this is going to be impressive to a journalist and to the viewers, it defies all logic.
And it's not only that he values that and raises that as a positive thing, it's that you cannot, and I challenge you and all your listeners, find a single time where he has ever been critical in the slightest, in any way, shape, or form about Putin. Hannity, early on, I think in 15 or 16, challenged him and said, Putin's a killer. And Trump's like, well, we're not so clean ourselves. Couldn't even say yes, he is. So when you get somebody who not only has this fawning admiration, but seemingly an absolute 100% unwillingness and inability to find or articulate the slightest concern or fault, I don't get that. And that's, it's worse. Anytime somebody is so absolutely blind in their view of anyone, it's concerning. But when you're doing that for somebody who is absolutely a military rival, an ideological rival, a rival on the geopolitical international stage, to have that view of somebody, ask him about faults with Macron, thousands of instances. Theresa May, same thing. Let's go down, Angela Merkel, sure, plenty of criticism. Vladimir Putin, not a one. Not a single thing. And it boggles my mind. It boggles my mind that an entire party who traditionally for the last several generations in America throughout the Cold War were the party of a strong national defense and anti-communism and standing up to the Soviets through strength of our national defense, suddenly is in the thrall of this man who cannot say the slightest negative thing about Vladimir Putin.
Kim Jong-un went to see Vladimir Putin this week. Went for a first visit. He hasn't actually left North Korea since before the pandemic. And, he made the long journey, and it was covered pretty widely. And they were having conversations about potential military relationship going forward. Russia needs weapons. It's kind of running out of ammunition. And North Korea, has the capability. That in itself is very dangerous. But what is more dangerous is that Donald Trump gave Kim Jong-un an Elton John album of Rocket Man and created a kind of bromance with him, which with those weird photographs of them like holding hands and walking across the demilitarized zone. And now Kim Jong is back in touch with his old friend Vladimir Putin. The way I would predict it is that if Trump were to win in 2024, he would want to be in that party. He would want to be part of that coalition. Those are the people. And the moment that you get three superpowers, people that have weapons of mass destruction together, that is very, very dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. And I think what concerns me most immediately is that I can think of fewer people. The importance of this coming election cannot be overstated to two people. One, Donald Trump, because if he's going to stay out of jail, he needs to have some return to the presidency, certainly to try and stop any federal prosecution. What that does or doesn't do on a state level, who knows? But his, not just political career, but his life in many ways depends on regaining the presidency. The other person that has an extraordinary amount riding on this is Vladimir Putin, because it is very clear, I think, that if Trump regains the presidency, that he is immediately going to push for a resolution of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Likely, whether it's, sort of freezing the lines, giving Crimea in perpetuity to Russia and what they do with, the eastern parts of Ukraine, which have been invaded, I don't know. But Trump is not going to support the continuation of U.S. military assistance to Ukraine.
Yeah, he'll give him Donbass and say, you've got that.
Right. And for Putin, who's already faced one near coup from Prigozhin, the prospect of a continuing unsuccessful invasion to his political future, to his future political survival is immense. And if Biden is reelected, that's going to pose a significant challenge to Vladimir Putin. Whereas if Trump is elected, that in many ways makes Putin's job far, far easier, let alone long-term goals of splitting the Atlantic alliance and breaking up NATO and any number of things that Trump was well on his way to doing, wittingly or not during his first administration. But to have two parties, one, a candidate for the president of the United States, two, a hostile foreign leader like Vladimir Putin with so much riding on the election, I am concerned what that looks like, that to the extent Russia was certainly involved in meddling in our election in 2016, to a lesser extent in 2020, at this point, the gloves are off for Putin. So I don't know if there's, how much more he could do or would be willing to do in this upcoming election. I'm not, I do discussion for another time about what, how much foreign disinformation and meddling plays a role compared to just the sort of innate domestic nastiness that occurs. I'm not, convinced that, it's not overblown in some cases, but I do worry how much Vladimir Putin has running on this coming election and what he will or won't do with regard to that, and what is or is not going on in terms of all of the folks who there's a logical goal just to, destabilize the United States, and to the extent they see an entire party who is saying we need to radically, tear apart the federal bureaucracy. We need to defund and dismantle the FBI and DHS and DOJ. That to a Russian propaganda seers, to a Russian intelligence agency, it's
like Christmas.
It's magic, right? It's like, hey, how can we help fund this? How can we help advance this? How can we help bolster and heighten this narrative in the visibility of the American and global populations? So there is I think this isn't simply a domestic thing going on. I think there are plenty of outside actors outside the United States who see a lot of this debate and see a lot of value in encouraging and funding the dissent and the sort of the conflict.
Part of the problem with when Bill Barr paraphrased the Mueller report gave the impression that there was no influence or Russian influence in the 2016 election is that provides cover for Putin to do it again. And as we know, whenever there are incidences of some kind of hacking, the security services, it all leads back to the Kremlin in one way or another. The 2024 election will undoubtedly have a huge amount of influence from Russia through the internet. Again, people don't know when they're being manipulated. It comes through Facebook and the ecosystem that they happen to operate in online. And so there are so many factors involved now in helping Donald Trump win, not least the impeachment of Joe Biden, which is, again, a diktat that's come from Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the one who's communicated through Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and putting all the pressure on Kevin McCarthy, so he has to fold because he wants to keep his speakership. There are so many layers to this. And then Donald Trump taking an unconventional attitude towards how the law works. And instead of encourage or allowing his lawyers to kind of lead the charge, he is dictating to them what they should be doing, which is why he's trying to sue judges and district attorneys, just turning everything on its head. The result of all of this, from Russia and from Trump and from the Heritage Foundation with Project 2025, there's so many people involved, not to mention gerrymandering and redrawing of districts. The point I'm getting to is that Trump could win. Not necessarily because he's got the votes, because as we've discovered, his support is diminishing, but because the system of voting in the US is subject to so many loopholes and the potential for interference. So just tell me how secure you feel the election could be. What's the FBI doing about it? How focused are they on a repeat of 2016 and 2020 on 2024?
Well, I think they made a lot of progress. I mean, they set up a foreign interference task force just within the FBI, but also working with the community. And I think we were much better prepared in 2020 than we were in 2016. And so I don't think the prospect of a massive disinformation campaign from abroad having success, I don't think is realistic. But look, I do, the best analogy I can come up with is, America's facing a huge number of massive wildfires across the United States, which are generated in the United States, which are endemic to the United States. But yet you have Russia with 100 gallons of gasoline who is watching this. And if they want to be as malicious as possible with 100 gallons of gasoline and have free reign to kind of go in where there's some wildfire that exists, which is threatening to go out of control, to pour a little gas here, to pour a little gas there, you can do immense damage. You're not causing the bulk of these wildfires. You're not, going to have a huge say at the end of the day whether they're all successfully contained or not. But it doesn't take a lot to cause immense mischief and damage. And I do think the structure, to your point, the structure, whether it's, a third party like No Labels or RFK Jr., the prospect is somebody, not that there isn't a greater level of support for Joe Biden, who, clearly overwhelmingly won the popular vote, but due to the weirdness of the electoral college and the sort of demographics of the way things work, and particularly third party, any number of things could cause, certainly, I think, for Trump to be elected. And what does, worry me, two big things, right? During the first Trump administration, you did have people who were historically Republican government people who came in to serve in his administration, who were not crazy, who were competent, who tried to do a good job, who tried to push back. By and large, they all left, right? By the end, they had quit, they had been fired, they weren't there, and you saw the second and third string, the mediocre white men like Jeff Clark and Ken Cuccinelli and others who are just not really the best America has to offer. That we will be lucky to get that as the starting team in a future Trump administration. You are not going to have all these, General Kelly and Kirstjen Nielsen and Rex Tillerson and all these people are not going to be willing to, Steve Mnuchin, they're not going to be willing to return people of that caliber.
You'll get Mike Flynn instead.
Right. And so, too, I think there's also the other thing that worries me is the sense that I had from the Trump campaign and the early administration is they did not expect to win. They were surprised come the morning after election when they realized they had won the White House. They had not made plans. It was, all something that Trump, I think, frankly, was trying to do to generate publicity, to generate sales of his stakes in university and charitable foundation or whatever else that he thought he could grift off of the notoriety of having won and lost the presidency. And suddenly he finds himself there. And I think particularly when you look to strategists like Bannon, this idea of chaos and remaking the administrative state, they didn't really have a plan to do it, and they lost. There were months and months and months where they scrambled to just get the administration in place. And I think they understand that was a lost from their perspective, a lost opportunity to, from day one, to quickly get in there, to boot out, sort of nonpartisan professionals, to install loyalists, one, and to particularly do that in the areas which I think they underappreciated the need to have loyalists at: the head of the Department of Justice, the head of the Department of Defense, the head of the FBI, all the people who have guns, which is scary from the perspective of if you are an authoritarian or an authoritarian desiring person, to come to the realization at the end of your last presidency when you didn't have, necessarily the yes men, at DOD who would or would not do what you wanted to do in terms of putting down the insurrection or sending in the National Guard, having an understanding early on that very quickly we need to move to assert control over these organizations, and two, to take in, anybody across the government. You're like, well, if you donated to a Democrat based on the election records, well, we're going to, remove you from your senior executive position. Not political appointees. I'm not talking about that top level who have to get, who are appointed by the administration and confirmed by the Senate. I'm talking about career professionals, the things that make our professional bureaucracy, not a patronage system, not a corrupt sort of, thing you'd find in a developing nation that has, just rampant corruption. That is the sort of thing. And again, Anthony, nothing's hidden. You mentioned all these groups that are out there now saying, here are our plans to identify these folks, to remove them, and to put in loyalists from day one. And they're saying it. It's not hidden. It's not a secret. It is absolutely being put out there. It is fundamentally undemocratic, and nobody cares. And yet, maybe you get an article here or a news mention there. nobody's really talking about the fact that it is going on, that is absolutely what they plan to do, and that plans are being drawn up now and will be in place.
But this is, it's almost American exceptionalism, isn't it? The idea that, oh, well, that'll never happen to our country. People have very short memories. I was thinking the other day about, I was making a video and I was putting some clips together of what it was like during Donald Trump's presidency. The left and progressive thinkers, Democrats, they don't go quietly. They like to protest. They like to stand up for their rights. We had Women's March. We had BLM marches. We had so much counter-protest to the Donald Trump movement. He erected that horrific fence outside it was a fortress around the White House. Then we had police brutality in untold numbers, because police suddenly felt like they could do whatever they liked because Donald Trump was in charge, and he basically said to them, you don't have to go easy on people, just go for it. We had the murder of George Floyd and Derek Chauvin thinking he could get away with it because Donald Trump was the president, even though he was being filmed by a passerby. Terrible, terrible things. The civilians being disappeared off the streets of Portland by military personnel in kind of unmarked clothing in unmarked vehicles. This is like third world stuff, and it was happening here in America under Donald Trump's presidency. That is what we have to look forward to again if he were to win. The unrest. My local high street was boarded up. There was the National Guard standing on the streets around where I live. Do people not remember that? Lafayette Square and a military helicopter being used. A report was done. It came down to like 300 feet to buzz people out of the way so Trump could go and have his photo op with the Bible. This is just horrendous. It is not the fair and free America that I moved to because I wanted to come to a place that was, a true kind of place of freedom. Why do people have such short memories, Peter?
I don't know. I think probably because a lot of folks are not necessarily that closely engaged in events. And so when something significant happens, they take notice, but because they're not living it day in, day out, they forget about it. I think there is a tendency, whether it's American exceptionalism, whether it's arrogance, whether it is a sort of rose-colored glasses view of American democracy and an unwillingness or being afraid to consider how bad it might become. And, it wasn't just, remember, and again, this goes to the point of who will be the guardrails in the next Trump administration? He wanted the 82nd. He's like, I want not the National Guard. I want active duty Army divisions in D.C. Bring them up. And there was huge pushback, I think, from potentially Bill Barr and from DOD, notwithstanding Bill Barr's little march through Lafayette Square that ended up, tear gassing or pepper spraying everybody, minutes afterwards. But Trump's desire, I want active duty troops on the ground right here in Washington, D.C. to put this down. He wanted that. Yeah. And parades,
military parades he wanted, right, and there was pushback on that.
If you don't have people around him pushing back on that, putting alligators in the Rio Grande and, shooting people in the leg, these horrible things that people were telling me, no, that's illegal. You can't do that. When you have, the January 6th Team Normal and Team Crazy, right? When you had like Sidney Powell and Mike Flynn and Patrick Byrne, what happens if that's your full-time kitchen cabinet at the White House? People like that saying crazy things. And whatever barriers in terms of the rule of law that existed, if people aren't there to do it because they don't want to, because they're not competent, because nobody who would be willing to do it is willing to serve. I think people are comfortable being comfortable. They don't want to consider how bad it might be. There is a natural reluctance to say, oh, that's overblown. It'll never get, somebody will stop it. Nobody would actually do it. But then you look and see how, well, no, actually people did do it. People actually were planning for it. And it's not this comfortable veneer of law and order and comfort. I think people don't appreciate how thin that is. and, to our peril. And some of it is like, when was the last time, like, I don't think if you go through a period where you're fighting World War I as a nation or World War II, when you have the Great Depression, when you have existential challenges, I think that lends a population an appreciation of how, one, valuable the peaceful and fruits of democracy are, but two, how transient it can be if you don't actively work for it. And we've been, let's face it, we've had a global war on terror, and I don't want to minimize anybody's service in, Iraq or Afghanistan, but largely the past generation and a half have been marked by pretty peaceful, largely comfortable existences for most of us.
We've had it easy. That's a kind of way to look at it, right? It's unlike Europe, which of course, in 1939 fell to war and has daily reminders of it. The US, unless you're, living in Pearl Harbor, you don't really get that daily reminder in the same way.
Yeah, and I thought, did COVID had the potential for bringing us together, but I think even COVID divided us as a nation because you had some people who somehow it broke down oddly along party lines. On the one hand, like medical science, everybody go, wear a mask and get vaccinated, somehow became a partisan issue. How, never before, when we were fighting polio, that was not a partisan issue, but somehow this thing, COVID, that could have brought a nation together, a pandemic where everybody was isolated and we band together and common sacrifice for each other, and we come out together because we value our fellow man and woman. Instead, it's like, fuck you, I'm not getting vaccinated. You can't tell me what to do. Don't tread on me. I have got my rights. I'm not going to wear a mask. And that became a political thing. And so, I don't know. I worry about our ability to come together and continue to see common ideals as a nation that transcend party, because I think we've somehow lost that.
10 seconds on the clock. How many things can you name that are always growing? Your relationships, your skills, your customer base? How about businesses on Shopify? When we started podcasting, an online store was the furthest thing from our minds. Now we're selling t-shirts and Midas Touch merch, and it's so easy, all because we use Shopify. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business, from the launch of your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the "did we just hit 1 million orders" stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're delivering daily digests or serving sensational scoops, Shopify will help you sell everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person point-of-sale system, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, up to 36% better compared to other leading commerce platforms. And sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds and Rothney's and Brooklinen and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's extensive help resources are there to support your success at every step of the way, because businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/weekend. Go to shopify.com/weekend now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. That's shopify.com/weekend. Real talk? 52% of men over 40 experience some form of erectile dysfunction between the age of 40 and 70, but it's always been a taboo topic. Thankfully, HIMS is changing that by providing affordable access to ED treatment, and it's all done online. HIMS provides access to clinically proven generic alternatives to Viagra and Cialis, up to 95% cheaper, with options as low as just $2 a dose. The process is simple and 100% online, no uncomfortable doctor's visits. Answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you for free in discreet packaging. No insurance is needed. You pay one low price for your treatments, online visits, ongoing shipments, and provider messaging. Hims has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, so if ED is getting you down, it's time to change that. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/weekend. That's HIMS.com/weekend for your personalized ED treatment options. That's hims.com/weekend. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Just a few weeks ago, I had a conversation with one of my favorite guests, Partners for Justice founder, Emily Galvin Almanza. The rise of Christian nationalism in the US is presenting some very interesting conversations. You know, when we see the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who says, you know, if anybody wants to know what my views are, they can pick up a Bible off of their shelf and just read it. And I thought to myself, well, I don't actually have a Bible on my shelf. He's already judging and presuming that I do. But, you know, this is very worrying because interpretation really is the word here. And his interpretation of the Bible and other people's interpretation of voting rights and interpretation of a woman's right to abortion access. And then, of course, the abortion of the interpretation of abortion in different states. So you don't know what kind of care you're entitled to because the law is changing all the time. And if you go to a hospital, you don't know what you're going to get. And the tragic stories as the one you just told are happening every day, all the time in these Republican states that have banned abortion because doctors don't want to get sued or struck off. This is like third world stuff in a place that Americans like to call the greatest country in the world.
It is, and it's the boiling frog theory as well. I mean, we are a country that has had some really weird, restrictive, puritanical laws, and unlike the rest of the world, venerates those aspects of our history rather than moving past them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think something that a lot of Americans fail to realize is that, like, when you compare us to Europe, I think a lot of people think that we're like peers with Europe. And
oh, no. I have experience in that.
Yes. So we would be considered extraordinarily conservative in a European framework. And like even European nations that have turned towards far-right movements still have universal access to healthcare and really, you know, good educational systems and investment in the social safety net so that there, you know, yes, there are housing crises, but nothing on the scale of ours. And I think that we forget that our baseline standard normal is actually really regressive. And so when we try to go regressive, we are going like Middle Ages, terrifyingly, perhaps biblical level regressive.
I always say this, you know, it's where is the right? You know, where is the right? And in America, the right is very much to the far right. But the right, say in the UK, for example, is, you would consider it moderate, I suppose, because nobody wants to get rid of universal free healthcare. Nobody wants to get rid of the welfare state, you know, the support for people who can't work. It's very interesting how your parameters for normality are different depending on the country you have been born into. And this is why I encourage everybody to emigrate just for a little bit, you know, just to get a sense of how it happens elsewhere. And I want to talk about this rise of the right that is happening across other nations as well. We just saw in Argentina a guy who is a lunatic. I mean, he's brandishing a chainsaw. That's his kind of, you know, that was his brand, the chainsaw. You know, getting elected in Argentina. We've got to take another quick pause for our sponsor, but we'll come back and take a look at these characters next here on The Weekend Show. Cold turkey may be great on sandwiches, but there's a better way to break your bad habits. We're not talking about some mind voodoo from your crazy neighbor or something you have to learn from a big, thick book. We're talking about our sponsor, Fume, and they look at the problem in a different way. Not everything in a bad habit is wrong. So instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavored air device that does just that. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing and anxiety while breaking your habit. I gave one to my sister. She needed it, and it completely changed her habits too. You got to try the new Solano Fume. It's made with a premium walnut barrel and an onyx-coated mouthpiece that has a slightly softer finish. Start the holidays off right with a good habit by going to tryfume.com/weekend and getting the Journey Pack today. Fume is giving listeners to this show 20% off until December 1st if you use the code WEEKEND to help make starting the good habit that much easier. Start the good habit at tryfume.com/weekend to save an additional 20% off the Journey Pack today until December 1st and 10% off all year round. Did you know that your temperature at night can have one of the greatest impacts on your sleep quality? If you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Inspired by NASA, Miracle Made uses silver-infused fabrics and makes temperature-regulating bedding so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. Using silver-infused fabrics originally inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, so you get a better sleep every night. These sheets are infused with silver that prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands and feel as nice, if not nicer, than bed sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Bacteria can clog your pores, causing outbreaks and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Go to trymiracle.com/weekend to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo code WEEKEND at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/weekend and use the code WEEKEND to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. That's trymiracle.com/weekend to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. We're back with Emily Galvin Almanza here on the Weekend Show. Across the globe, the far right appears to be on the ascent. It has seized commanding heights in Giorgia Meloni's Italy, Viktor Orban's Hungary, whilst formerly ostracized ethno-nationalist parties like the Sweden Democrats and the True Finns are now in governing coalitions. Argentina's just elected a president, this character Javier Milei, who promises to commodify all facets of social life, and accompanying that with rabid anti-feminism and culture war invectives. He says, in my government, there will be no cultural Marxism. We're hearing the same from Donald Trump. You know, he is now invoking the language of Adolf Hitler. And you know, we've been looking at how the speeches are the same, referring to vermin and using identical language. You know, despite everything you and I have just been discussing about what is normal, there is a gravitation towards these populist, extremist characters who pretend to be, you know, there for the people, but actually have no interest in that. They either want to burn it all down or just cause chaos. Where, you know, if this is a pandemic of authoritarianism, it's not looking good for the US next year.
Two things. First is that I think that your use of the word pandemic is really relevant here, because authoritarians rise through fear. One of the things I see in my sector, which is really interesting, is that people's idea of whether crime is rising or falling, which, by the way, is just a proxy for whether they feel safe at home. It follows very consistently with whether their preferred political party is in or out of power. So when people's party is out of power, they think crime is rising, whether or not it actually is rising. Why do we link our idea of power to crime so thoroughly? Well, because people generally are asking when they go to the voting booth or when they decide who to support some version of, am I safe? Will this person fix our economy? Am I safe? What about our healthcare system? Will I be able to get a healthcare if this person's elected? Am I safe? Will I be able to keep my job? Am I safe? There is no aspect of our government's role in our community that doesn't have something to do with whether we feel like we're okay. So when people feel really, really, really not okay, not safe, I think that there is a danger and a tendency to turn towards people who either express wanting to tear everything down, perhaps with a chainsaw, or people who are expressing extremist ideas of what the right answer is. And I think there is a danger of that in our country. And I don't just mean from folks who are already conservative because they have fears about immigration or because they have fears about our economy or because they have fears about, I've always been really amused by the fact that like apocalypse preppers are not climate change people. I really feel like we should get together on this. But setting that aside, I also feel like from progressives who feel like they're living in a country where this government has not been able to keep them safe because of the action of their states. I think that's really dangerous too, because you can reach a sense of helplessness or a sense of just frustration with the status quo that can drive people into extreme acts, views, and also divestment from government and from politics. So I think all of those are dangers. And yes, the pandemic, the actual pandemic, has contributed a lot to those feelings by confining people, changing the framework of our daily life, and creating new risks in our society.
I actually think the word populist is the wrong word, and the media uses it a lot. I see populist as maybe somebody who is more generous and kind of very much in the present, but I don't see Donald Trump as a populist. I see him as an authoritarian, and I think the choice now is between democracy and dictatorship. I mean, let's not forget that speech that he made. I can't remember if it was his inauguration speech or if it was before, but he said, "The American dream is dead. I alone can fix it." That is what they're doing here, isn't it? They are breaking stuff. I mean, he broke democracy by denying that the election was, by saying the election was rigged. And now he's saying, if you vote me back, I will bring democracy back to America.
Yeah, but it's also, it's relying on this idea that the American dream is dead. What is the American dream? It's hope. It's your aspiration. It's the idea that anyone can succeed. It's the idea that you can have a house and the ability to put food on the table for your family if you just work hard enough.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of people he's speaking to that do feel like that dream is dead, but because of lack of education, haven't linked that through to the very policies he's espousing. So people who are living in a small town in rural America and don't have any more doctors because all the doctors left town because of the possible criminalization of aspects of their practice, or have, teachers quitting their school system because the teachers are scared of book bans and scared of saying the wrong thing in the classroom and being persecuted. Or, I remember I was talking to a guy who's running for the Senate in West Virginia, and he was telling me an anecdote about how he'd been delivering water to a region of West Virginia that didn't have clean water. And he was talking to a Trump voter about that guy's vote. I mean, obviously this is a Democrat who's running for Senate, and he really, this was actually before Joe Manchin had decided not to run. So he thought it was going to be a much different race than it may turn out to be. But, he was talking to this guy about why he'd voted for Trump. And this guy was listing all the things that Trump was going to do for him. And the candidate said, all right, man, like I hear you on all those things, but all I see around here are Democrats bringing you clean water.
Yeah. And water, I mean, the fact that we even have to talk about the lack of clean water in the US, whether it be Flint, Michigan, or anywhere else, Biden is trying to remove lead pipes and replace them with new pipes. Contamination. I mean, I even checked my water supply here. It has 800 times the amount of arsenic that is legally acceptable. And I'm like, this, these are the norms that we've gotten used to. And so, again, it's this third world thing. It's like, it's constantly, for me anyway, as a European, it's like we have allowed third world action or third world experience to be normalized. And then it is these extremist characters that come along and they're like, well, I'll solve all your problems. And is it because there are so many problems that people don't have the time or the energy to kind of deal with all these things? So they're like, if one guy shows up with an orange face and is like, I'm going to sort all this out for you, you leave it to me, you get on, you carry on watching Netflix, chilling out, it's not a problem, I've got this, that some people are like, yeah, okay, you deal with it.
That's how confidence men have always operated, right? It's like, I have a really serious problem. The problem I have is really scary. All of these experts have told me that my problem is complicated and that it's going to take many different steps that are complicated and difficult and have to work together in order to fix my problem. On the other hand, I got this guy here who's like got weird hair, but they all have weird. Why do they all have weird hair? But the guy saying, I've got this. Don't even worry. It's simple. Yeah. They don't understand. I understand, which is how you get people buying into really unhinged solutions to complex problems because they are told that it is simple. And when they're asking, am I safe? Simplicity gives a quick yes answer, even if that answer is an illusion.
And there's no room for nuance in a lot of this stuff, is there? Because, so much of what you and I are discussing requires an understanding of nuance, whether it be the black man with his hands on the hood or the black man in uniform that is arresting him. We are required to make the effort to be open to nuance and have a nuanced conversation. And yet so much of what I hear from Republicans, MAGA Republicans and the like is just black and white. It's that side or that side. And, the thinking that if you shut the border, then suddenly there'll magically be more jobs. I mean, none of it makes sense. And yet people don't have the time for the nuanced conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, again, this comes down to education, tolerance for complexity, as you point out, for nuance. I think there's also a certain level of comfort with ambiguity. Mm-hmm. Like one of the things that I like about myself, but really, honestly, is that in law school, you're often called upon in a way that's quite alarming to know the answer to things, right? Like you get cold called. They are like, Miss Galvin Almanza, what is the answer? What is the hand theorem? And something that I embraced early in life that I'm really grateful for is the ability to say, I don't know. Let me learn more. Not actually great in a law school class, but great in a human life, which is comfort with not knowing, comfort with, I will give this to you in another context. North Americans, particularly in the United States, seem really comfortable instantly applying the politics of other nations to our own frameworks and saying, well, I read about this for 2 minutes, so I know everything about the South American situation that's going on, and like opining on it heavily. And I think that if we had more comfort with ambiguity and more humility in our own need to listen to people who are directly experiencing harm, to listen to people who have spent years working on that harm, that kind of humility and comfort with not knowing would serve us really well. It leads us away from authoritarian solutions because instantly, once you adopt a framework of humility and comfort with ambiguity, the guy who is sure he knows everything seems really not plausible.
Did you know that your temperature at night can have one of the greatest impacts on your sleep quality? If you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Inspired by NASA, Miracle Made uses silver-infused fabrics and makes temperature-regulating bedding so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. Using silver-infused fabrics originally inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, so you get a better sleep every night. These sheets are infused with silver that prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands and feel as nice, if not nicer, than bed sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Bacteria can clog your pores, causing outbreaks and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Go to trymiracle.com/weekend to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo code WEEKEND at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/weekend and use the code WEEKEND to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. That's trymiracle.com/weekend to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. If someone would have told me that there are science-backed ingredients that could help me feel 15 years younger in a matter of months, I wouldn't have believed it. Then I tried Qualia Senolytic. As we age, everyone accumulates senescent cells in their bodies. Senescent cells cause symptoms of aging, such as aches and pains, slow workout recoveries, sluggish mental and physical energy associated with that middle-age feeling. Also known as zombie cells, they are old and worn out and not serving a useful function for our health anymore, but they are taking up space and nutrients from our healthy cells. Much like pruning the yellowing off dead leaves of a plant, Qualia Senolytic removes those worn-out senescent cells to allow for the rest of them to thrive in the body. It takes just 2 days a month. The formula is non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, and the ingredients are meant to complement one another, factoring in the combined effect of all ingredients together. It has a 100-day money-back guarantee, and since taking Qualia Senolytic, I have higher energy levels, I feel 15 years younger, and feel more productive and enthusiastic in life, not to mention less aches and pains. Resist aging at the cellular level. Try Qualia Senolytic. Go to neurohacker.com/weekend for up to $100 off and use code WEEKEND at checkout for an additional 15% off. That's neurohacker.com/weekend for an extra 15% off your purchase. Thanks to Neurohacker for sponsoring today's video.
Lev Parnas is a Ukrainian-born American businessman and former associate of Rudy Giuliani. Parnas, Igor Fruman, they were all involved in the Trump-Ukraine scandal. He was sentenced to 1 year and 8 months in prison for fraud and campaign finance crimes. Well, after seeing the error of his ways, Lev Parnas spoke candidly to me about the danger of Donald Trump. So let's talk about the moment finally where you realized that you'd been duped, that you were surrounded by criminals and manipulators, and that the cult was not something that you could remain with. Was this when you were arrested? Was this when you were serving your federal prison time? I mean, when did the change come where you felt that, that moment where you were like, aha?
It was a process. I mean, the aha moment was when I got when I fired, when I was sitting in Alexandria, Virginia, when I got arrested, and I fired Trump's lawyers that he gave me, John Dowd and Kevin Downing, and I had no attorney at the time, not knowing what I'm even there for and how I'm ever going to get out, and having no contact to the outside world, without a piece of paper or a pen, not allowed, just with a soap bar and a toothbrush in my cell, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, I got a postcard slipped under my door. Addressed to me with no inmate number, nothing, just basically it was from the White House and Rudy Giuliani. And I'm not going to go into the message. You'll have to read the book and watch Midas Touch Network. I'm going to be releasing that stuff on there. But that was when I came to a rude awakening that something's wrong. And I kind of started turning and reflecting and understanding that now I'm being used as a scapegoat, that I need to think quickly. Otherwise, I might never get out of here and my family might never see me again. And then it was a process. I mean, through, going to prison, going through, first of all, COVID, the trial, prison, a lot of time, several years passed that I was able to reflect, understand, and now being out of the cult, you're able to look at other news stations, your other opinions, you're able to reflect and understand and say, now how stupid must have I been? Because look, I didn't realize I didn't see this was going on at the same time. This, because I only saw one way, no other way. And then really started, watching Trump lie on TV, knowing Giuliani lie on TV, one of the biggest moments came when, at the impeachment trial, when, Devin Nunes was sitting there as the, head House Judiciary Chair. And Eric Swalwell brought in something into evidence by saying, Lev Parnas said that, he interviewed on your behalf Victor Shokin or somebody, and he just lied to the American people and said, I don't know who Lev Parnas, he didn't even, he mispronounced my name. And then the next day, validation, when, because at first I was so upset. I was like, I can't believe, how is he going to get away with that? He's lying and blatantly. And Adam Schiff, I believe in God, and God works in mysterious ways. And the next day, Adam Schiff brought out the phone records, basically, showing that, well, wait a second, you were speaking to Lev Parnas for 10 minutes, and then the White House, and then Rudy Giuliani, and you guys had this whole conversation on such and such a date. And then watching him weasel out of it by trying to say, because the phone number was registered to my wife, though it wasn't him, it was his wife calling me. I mean, crazy excuses and just deflection. A
lie on top of a
lie. Deny, lie some more, deny some more. I mean, the Trump method. And I just kept watching all of that, and it just kept, reflecting and understanding. And it was, because it's not easy to get out of the cult in one day. It takes time. People don't understand because you live so long in one type of area thinking, it takes you some time. So as bad as prison was and as bad as getting arrested, I think it was a blessing to me because it saved my life and it saved my family's life because, if I would have been deeper in, who knows where it could have ended or how it could have ended. So I thank God that, I was able to get out, and now I'm able to tell the truth and be on my journey to be able to help other people and help our country by, revealing, how corrupt Trump, Giuliani, and a lot of these guys are.
So if I was to go through some of the big headlines that you were kind of suckered in for, the idea that the election was stolen and that Trump should have won because, of course, he, to all intents and purposes, Trump thinks he is the president. A lot of his followers still refer to him as the president, and he wears the badge and has a mock-up of the Oval Office in Mar-a-Lago. He's basically pretending to be the president, which is what he did while he was the president, ironically. I mean, that now, how does it feel now, kind of where you're at now emotionally and mentally, to kind of see that big lie as it's become known being repeated?
Well, it's mixed emotion. I feel bad as an American citizen that we're going through this division, this craziness, and what he's done to our country, the embarrassment he's put on us and the whole world. Because, on one hand, you have to understand America was a country that fought for democracy. We would go to other countries and teach them how to voting rights put an implication, because we had one of the things that made us great is no matter what side you were on, Republican or Democrat, once the elections were over, you had a transfer of power and it was on to the next one, and everybody kind of agreed. Whereas Trump basically broke that. There is no more. He continues to spew, saying that the election was stolen. So we're a laughingstock, in a lot of all over the world. And then the other thing is, the idolization of a dictator like President Putin. I mean, since when does America idolize a dictator and not stand for democracy. I mean, to hear them stand up in Congress and Trump and everybody talk about, the Ukraine,
all of them now. I mean, they're all into
that
him
we
now.
should not give Ukraine money. That which Russia is good. It's just mind-boggling. I mean, what's next? We're going to say that China is the leader of the world, and we should Taiwan, give them Taiwan also. I mean, it just doesn't make sense how this crazy flip transpired. I mean, in a way, it does, because we've never seen, I think the last time we've seen this cult mentality to this degree was when Hitler was around,
Yes.
Because you're not talking about a few thousand people. You got tens of millions of people that are so heavily, blinded by what's going on and the tentacles have reached now. And it's not just the regular public. You got people like in Congress and Senate and the DOJ and the State Department and the FBI, because the division is big, and you have in the Army, and our soldiers. So it's a very dangerous time. So, as an American citizen, it's difficult to watch. But
about as a refugee? Because, this is something that as a migrant myself, I think about a lot. You came to the US as a refugee, and then you're buddying up with people who are referring to immigrants and migrants and asylum seekers as vermin and as murderers and as rapists and as criminals, which is just offensive and completely untrue. Did any of that did you struggle with any of that?
I had certain days, even when I was deep in the cult, I had certain days that I struggled with certain things, like, when Trump would make fun of certain, there was one instance in particular when he made fun of a reporter that had, I think, cerebral palsy or something, like, he was up there, he made a comment, and Trump came out and, made fun of him. That really, hit me hard, because watching everybody laugh at that, sitting in the hotel and watching on TV how everybody's laughing at that, it was kind of sick, but it's difficult to say anything, because then they would look at you right away like, what's wrong with you? Like, maybe there's no trust. So, and, having conversations at home where my wife would constantly tell me, that's not you, Lev. Like, how can you be around like these people? You grew up in a different world, you used to stand up against bullies, and now, you're around all these bullies and all this stuff. And, I would shut her up and basically, you say, you don't understand, this is the president of the United States. Are you kidding me? Do you understand what's going on? Do you understand where I'm at and what's happening? This is something that, and I would push the envelope, in which I almost lost my family because of my actions and being in the cult. And so it was difficult with lots of moments, especially when he would talk about immigrants, because a lot of, people in doing that, talking about, had a relationship with certain immigrants. Either they had wives that families were immigrants, like, Trump's
most Americans.
Like Melania was an immigrant, what I'm saying to you. Let's not go that far. I mean, most America's made up of immigrants. So for them to sit there and spew it, it was difficult. But, when you're in the cult and when it's like being on drugs, I tell people, you're not really, if you take too much drugs, no matter how much you think you're in control of your faculties, you're not. That's why people do such outrageous things. That's why people jump off buildings, think they could fly. That's not because it's because the mind gets taken away. And being in a cult, it's sometimes even more powerful than a drug, because of the environment you're in, and you're surrounded. Like, at least when you're on drugs, there you could have support from different people that could help you try to get out of it. But when you're in a cult, everybody around you is part of the cult. You're not allowed to be around people that your friends, your family. That's why if you take a look at the division that's transpired, even inside families, we have families in America that don't sit at the same table because of they don't agree with either you're for Trump or you're for the right of so.
And the sad part of that is that it's completely meaningless. Like, Trump is meaningless. Like, the idea that the president as an individual should define you. It's pure cult mentality. And all the people that would take a bullet for this guy, their lives were not better during those 4 years.
That's the crazy part. Absolutely. They don't understand. And it wasn't that he made it better, because what a lot of them don't understand, that there's a time gap that goes on, So what we're feeling now is probably what Trump did, and
right.
And what we felt was from more what Obama did, and then then later on we're going to feel what Biden did. You don't feel right away what the different changes the person puts in and stuff like that. The president puts in, but I would never, I think calling him the president or even ex-president it's a disservice to our country because he's a dictator, and he only cares about himself. The things that he spews, the rallies, the hatred, the division, the anger that the United States president is a president that usually talks about love, not hate. Talks about unity, not division. He's supposed to be the president for all the people. Doesn't matter if you like him or you don't like him. His job is to be able to, because the country is his job is to take care of everybody. And
he didn't even try that, And that the crazy thing, Lev, is that COVID could have been the thing that brought everyone together. COVID could have been that thing that bound us all because it didn't pick out Republicans or Democrats or straight or gay or black or white.
Yeah.
It chose everybody, and he rejected COVID as a way to unify the country. And subsequently and consequently the loss of hundreds of thousands more lives than were necessary if he had taken it seriously.
Oh, absolutely. But, because he understands, not stupid, he understands that if he unites the country that he'll never win. He'll never be in the seat because a lot of people, his gig is up. The only way he could continue his power reign is by the division and building onto his cult and building his numbers to be bigger than the others and to be able to contain it with power. Because it's not about winning with policies right now. Because when he goes on his rants, he doesn't talk about policies. He's not out there, he's talking about revenge and anger and how he's retribution, getting rid of the Constitution. I mean, crazy stuff. So it's
that is the plan, isn't it? I mean, if he was to win again, he wants to dismantle the federal government.
Oh, absolutely.
He wants to dismantle the FBI and the Justice Department. He is going to go full dictator, full autocracy, full fascist.
Because he wants to stay in power. He doesn't want to leave. He doesn't want you to be able to vote him out.
Which is what Putin has done in Russia.
100%. 100%, Anthony. That's exactly his idol, Putin. He looks up. He has a bromance with Kim Jong-un. Just think about they're writing love letters. I mean,
so weird.
It's like you can't.
Weird.
If somebody told you would never believe it if you didn't see it with your own eyes.
Yeah, I feel sorry for Elton John being given that CD of Rocket Man. I was just like, don't bring Elton John into this. He's done nothing wrong. My final question to you is, you're out now. You're still serving your time. You're under house arrest, I understand, which can't be easy in itself. But what would you say to other people who hopefully are not going to get arrested and have to, do prison time, but actually needs that little nudge to be able to recognize that what they've been listening to is untrue, that the media is, there's an ecosystem of far-right propaganda that they've been caught up in? What would you say to people who maybe have thought about the fact that maybe they're, on the wrong team?
I mean, it's difficult to say because you have, the way I look at it is you have three kind of people right there. You have your cultists that no matter what I say is not going to change their mind because until they hit a dead end wall, until they hit a rock themselves and come to a reckoning, you're not going to get them out of the cult because once you're in, it's like you're in and you're in for good. Then you have the people that are basically know that he's a fake, know he's no good, don't like him, don't want him, but for their own personal financial purposes or greed that they're pushing, not looking at what the future is like as far as what the whole country or will be for their kids or grandkids, but are looking what their pockets are right now and think that certain policies that he's going to promote or do is going to help them in their business or help them personally. And those people, have greed that are in their eyes and they're not stupid. They know exactly what it is. So there's nothing I could really say to them because they know the truth. They just, they're
grifting.
They're grifting, exactly. They're willing to play the game. But then the third group is where I think it could be helped. And that's the people that don't have enough knowledge of what's going on. That's the majority, people that work hard every day and get glimpses on television and believe that what they're seeing is true and is driving their beliefs on who to vote for and what to do. And for them, I would say that we live in a time of technology right now, and the best thing you could do is do a little, sit down and do a little research, go on the different sites, go on the left and right and see the difference and find the middle and realize the truth and what's going on, because I think every vote is important. And I think that it's important to know what's going on in our country right now to be able to make the right decision, because who we vote into president 2024 is, they say every election is important. This is the one. This is really the one, because if God forbid he gets into office, first of all, I don't know if we'll ever be able to get him out. Second of all, the damage that he could cause will be, could happen for the next 10, 20, 30 years to come. So it's very important. I think information is key. Knowledge of the information is key, because I think what they pry on is you not getting the information. And by you getting just tidbits and pieces of things that they tell you, and then you run with it, look at it, try to find it. With the information sources we have out there today, I mean, you could spend 10 minutes a day and you could see that, a lot of the stuff they're talking about is propaganda nonsense, and it'll help you understand what you're dealing with.
Yeah. Well, that's what we try to do here on Midas Touch and on 5 Minute News. And I feel like, people are turning to independent journalism more and more because, the legacy networks, people are just not sure who to believe. And so, find someone you trust and listen to them.
Absolutely. People like you, Anthony, do a great job. Independent networks are, I think, what the future is about, because the right and the left is too jaded. They press their own agenda, but people need to know the truth, exactly what's going on, to be able to make the right choice.
Well, that was the weekend show for 2023. There's nearly 100 interviews that you can access via Midas Touch or 5 Minute News. I'll be back in the new year with more episodes, more conversations, and more analysis. So from all of us at 5 Minute News and Midas Touch, Happy New Year.